Check, Mike.
Here
Check,
we go.
We back on the outdoor feed. What a week. What a week. I don't know. We got a lot to talk about.
Shit went down.
It might be down. It might be up.
Yeah, it depends on perspectives, I guess. I mean,
now you can shut up and stop complaining if your team wasn't in goal. Now it is.
Yeah, I mean, where do we start?
Not that anybody ever takes us seriously. If anything goes wrong when your favorite team is playing, it's the other team's fault anyway. So it's not like that's going to matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to cover a couple things that just how to make sense of it. How to use a method here. Eric, can you please not vape in front of me, man?
Oh, why are you still quit? Are you still?
I'm just kidding. You can vape.
This is actually.
I don't want nicotine any less if you're not vaping.
This is zero nicotine.
Have you continued to stop doing a vape, or have you broken?
No, I'm dry. I'm in withdrawal for like 6 days.
Still, eh? Nice.
Withdrawal is up there. Like being sick sucks, but withdrawal is really worse because you could just make yourself feel better. It's right there.
Right.
I got my nicotine gum in front of me and I'm not chewing it. And my vape's right over there. And I'm not smoking it.
This is zero nicotine, so I'm trying to
so you're trying to quit too.
I need to get on that.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, it's just like a mint.
I don't want to sit here and whine to 5,000 people about my problems, but it's not like opiate withdrawal is definitely like one of the top 5 worst experiences I've ever had. And this is nowhere near the top, but it sucks because it's just so persistent.
You've experienced opiate withdrawal?
Yeah.
From painkiller, right? For surgery?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's when your skin's crawling and
oh, shit.
Oh, yeah.
The sweats.
I've accidentally taken... I've also seen Train Spotting, so I feel like I know what withdrawal's like.
Yeah.
Nah, this is fine. Hopefully it's worth. I notice like every time I sip coffee or like alcohol, my hand goes into my pocket like vape, but not there. We're 1 week down. First week's the hardest, apparently. So thank you all for holding me accountable.
Better than cigarettes. I told my doctor I was going zero nicotine with my vaping, and then they said, "Oh, you're already vaping and off cigarettes. That's good enough." I was like, "Don't tell me that."
Yeah. We're just trying to avoid talking about the election for as long as possible.
All right.
The what? Oh, was there an election?
It wasn't ours. It was theirs.
Yeah, it was theirs, but it's the whole world's in a way.
Yeah,
but now we're not interfering with it, so we can talk about it because it's already happened. Otherwise, we might get accused.
Foreign interference.
Yeah, foreign agents.
I got a case to make that it's a good thing.
Yeah, I've got one of those too.
We're not gonna do a "Hey, I left the left" thing. That's never gonna happen.
Revisit Zizek's old argument.
Yeah, it worked so well the first time. Anyway, we're gonna have to have some method here. All of the talking industry is using the term historic realignment, which I don't know, remains to be seen. I'll believe it when I see it. But we do have to have some kind of method here if we're gonna talk about this, because otherwise, who gives a shit what we think? But I have to imagine pretty much everyone's probably glad that the Democratic Party lost. They are the lesser of two evils, of course. So losing them is coincident with a worse outcome. But the party itself, it is quite an awful machine of some incredibly transparent political cynicism. And I don't think anyone's shedding tears for them.
Yeah.
Poor Liz Cheney. She only just got here.
I mean, I kind of wanted to acknowledge that I think that there probably are a lot of people who are pretty scared. And I don't know, I don't want to necessarily make a judgment call about how valid those fears are. But I think notably, I was talking to some women and I kind of realized for them, it kind of hits a little harder, and I'm going to sound like a feminist soy boy over here. But I just want to say, I think for me, I was immediately kind of going yeah, the Democrats are fucking stupid, good. But I don't know, there's women in my life, women I know who I think kind of reminded me that there's something really disturbing, and maybe hits a little different. This is maybe universal, but it could hit a bit different if you're a woman. And people are looking at this guy who lost a civil case for sexual assaults, who is probably at the very least a sexual harasser, at worst maybe a rapist. And like, obviously think back to like grab them by the pussy, like way back the first time. And it's like all that shit's been normalized where a person like that can get a majority. And I just think that that can hit a little harder, I think, if you're a woman. And I don't know. I just think it's worth saying that. Like, I think like it's disturbing in a way that I don't think connected with me until I had some conversations with various women.
That's very chivalrous of you.
Well, I wanted to say that and then agree with you.
I mean, it's very chivalrous of you, and I would like to admit that while I say it sardonically, I do not mean it sardonically, but it's not cool to be woke anymore as of this week. But I am still woke, so I will continue to be woke, but then also sardonically make fun of you for being woke. But to be real for a second, yeah, this does mean, particularly in some states, life's gonna get worse for people who don't deserve it, and noting that and not discounting that. But even though the Republicans are fucking orcs, doesn't make me feel sad that Denethor fell off the tower.
I also feel that the Democratic Party like deserves to be punished for how fucking inept they are. So like I agree with that, but I wanted to have that caveat. And I also should probably add, like, I know that there's some trans listeners that we have, especially in our Patreon. And I know that for them, this is also like quite a disturbing outcome. And I want to acknowledge that too. Right. So like, but then all that being said, yes, like the Democratic Party is fucking horrible. And in a way, like they kind of have a very punchable face. And I feel like they got punched in the face. And like, there's at least that little bit of satisfaction that there's such a bad party.
It's Schadenfreude. And then we have the next 4 years to deal with. Come to Canada, you know?
Yeah, there's always that worry. Like, I'm glad Harris lost but then we have to sort of see what Trump does, because like, yeah, his deportation promises could be pretty nasty, and what's going to happen at the border, even though Biden sort of carried on a lot of Trump era stuff anyway with that, and like what's going to happen, like all the questions about what's going to happen in all these conflicts and hotspots with Trump at the reins is also going to determine, you know, how glad we are that the Democrats lost, because yeah, might eat those words later.
I would say like my gladness about them losing is like, you know, I also want to recognize that in a way there's like a little bit of a cope there. Like it's a little bit of a cope for me, but like I do also genuinely believe that the Democratic Party has just gone so far from anything that resembles like class politics. You know, it's so snobby and elitist. It does. I realize it deserved to lose, but part of that is also a cope because I mean, Trump is obviously horrible in so many more ways.
Yeah, that's another turn of phrase that's just been hammered. Historic realignment, and then too much identity politics, not enough class politics. But Vic, you say that they're doing too much identity politics. Are you sure you're not just saying that because they're blaming you guys, your identity, for them losing?
Yeah. Latino men voted 54 to 46% for Trump nationally.
Yeah, I'm looking at the demographics, and it's all pretty evenly split. Like more men voted for Trump, more white people voted for Trump. Black is pretty skewed towards Harris. But the rest of the categories are like 48, 44, 54. Like everything's kind of evenly split, except for like the black vote is 85% Harris. But everything else is like pretty close to the middle. And even by age groups too. It's all even age groups. Younger people and education. Even education is surprisingly kind of even. No college, more for Trump.
I think Harris gained some ground. The only place where she gained ground over Biden was, I think, in like white rich people.
Women with college degrees.
Which is kind of funny compared to Biden. I mean, she like improved, but she did worse than him on pretty much everything else. She did a little bit better with like certain women, like a certain level. But white women still came out and voted to, I think, 54% or 55% for Trump.
One thing that I had to keep in mind, and I think we should keep in mind when analyzing any of this, is like he got 70 million. She got 60. So it's basically 1 in 5 Americans voted for Trump and 1 in 5 voted for Kamala. Not showing up is also some sort of more vague comment on the process, but still a comment on the process.
I mean, yeah, of course. Well, I don't know what turnout will be, but like
Turnout was 60%,
Okay.
but then you have like everyone under 18 is included in the population, all that stuff. So 1 in 5 and 1 in 5. It's not like everyone went out. There's definitely overrepresentation in demographics. But another thing I thought was hilarious as a Canadian was how the Kamala Copers were like, this was the most brilliant campaign anyone could have run in 100 days. It was perfect. It's the
Oh my
country that's the
God.
problem. That's really whack because almost every country in the world has an election in under 100 days. You know, the longest election, I checked this up, the longest election in Canadian history was 78 days long. And that was 2015 when our current prime minister was elected. 78 days was our longest in our 100 and whatever year history.
I remember them talking about that. I remember the media being like, "Oh my God, this is going to be a grueling election." 78 days.
It's nothing compared to the States. They're constantly campaigning. It's like you get elected and then you got to start campaigning.
They're always
right away.
running.
Yeah, how do you get anything done?
You don't.
You don't. But anyway, I think we all saw the punchline coming. We didn't speak about this on record, so there's nothing to gloat about. But we said behind the scenes, pretty sure Trump's going to have it, except for abortion. Abortion was like, maybe people are concerned enough about that to get up.
Well, I agree. I mean, I've been saying for a while to people like that I thought that Trump was going to win. And I mean, for me, it was just a simple reason. Everyone was like, no, the polls are so close. And for sure, like the polls were close, but Democrats always get overcounted in these polls. And that was my big concern. I was like, if she's like winning by like 1 or 2% in Michigan, like I think I mentioned that in 2020, the polls at the end had Biden up by like 7 points in Michigan, and he won by like less than 1%. And like that pattern was pretty consistently true in like all the other battleground states that he ended up winning. So like when everyone was like, oh, she's in the lead by like 1 or 2%, in my mind, I was like, well, that doesn't mean shit if you like think about the way the polls were the last 2
Yeah,
times.
that's another weird thing. How people vote divides along political lines too. Early voting versus like turnout on the day.
I don't really know shit about that, but all the demographics are being blamed for it. Young people, we've lost young men. We've lost black men. Yeah, men are a big betrayed the country.
Mostly just misogyny and racism is to blame.
There is a minority of people who are glad that Trump won. And I say minority because even at max, it's 1 in 5. 20% of the country voted for him. But the billionaires, we've gotten to know them a little bit. The Christian nationalists, we've got to know them a little bit. Mm-hmm. You got the Zionists, and then you got the voters who are kind of just a bunch of dupes. I don't think there's any harm in saying so. We have a methodology to back it up. Elon Musk posted an hour ago that the most educated states in America are all voted Democrat because America's elite universities are effective at spreading Marxism. Can you imagine?
God, that's like the mirror image. He's like, I mean, it's funny. He always talks about, he might have even popularized the like woke mind virus. Like, it's just funny how like that virus just creates a mirror image, because like that is just such anti-woke mind virus right there.
Yeah, Harvard and Yale, a $4 billion endowment between the two of them, the breeding ground of the CIA throughout the 20th century, just bleeding Marxism
Learn anything
everywhere.
about Marxism, you'd know that the Democratic Party does not represent communism. That whole thing about Comrade Kamala is insane. And I hear it in Canada too. Like Trudeau is going to release a communism in here. I'm like, that is, oh my God. Liberal politics is very far from communism.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like they need to be, I mean, you know, not to jump ahead to like what they need to do next, but at least I think it's just hilarious that they couldn't be farther from Marxist. The donor class in the Democratic Party fucking owns the party, basically. And you could hear it in her like fear whenever she's being interviewed to say things that are going to upset the donors. I mean, corporate, like, tell that, like, if you think they're Marxist, tell that to the corporate donors who fucking run the Democratic Party.
Yeah, redistribute their wealth. Let's do it.
Why would you even support the Democratic Party at this point when you know Trump's just going to shovel you tax cuts.
I don't know. That's like an interesting question. I mean, I do think that there
purely
is
moral.
I don't want to talk too stupid because I know I don't really know anything about this, but there's a new open relationship between like public relationship between the billionaires and the Trump Republican Party. And that was always going to be the old billionaires, the quiet billionaires via the Heritage Foundation, that shit. But the tech billionaires and the giant reactionary podcast network backing Trump, that's new. And if we can only see the tip of the iceberg, there's probably a lot more there.
We'll see. I mean, here's the thing. Like the working class that voted for Trump. Yeah, I think, okay, so like I would say that when I like realized the result and sort of like my cope, I mean, I'm around a lot of people. I've been just happened to be on campus in my old department at U of T because I go to this writing group. So I was talking to a lot of my colleagues. Some of them I would say are like kind of like liberal intellectual elitists, I would say. And, there's like a lot of panic and hysteria about like what Trump's going to do from some, not all, from some. And I kind of understand that sentiment, but I guess like my cope and what I've been telling people, it's funny. A lot of these people were like so sure Kamala was going to win. And I'm thinking of one friend who I wouldn't actually call him necessarily like he's pretty left, like a Bernie kind of person. But anyway, I was like, I was kind of telling him about the math with the polls, and I kept saying it the last couple of weeks, and he's like, "Man, you're so pessimistic." And I was like, "No, like I just think he's gonna win." And then when finally like he won, I kind of turned into the optimist, and he turned into like more of the pessimist about what the next 4 years were gonna bring. And my optimism, I guess, is in the utter ineptitude and the ineffectiveness that he's gonna have, I think, in being able to implement any of his policies or deliver for the working class at all. Like I was saying it to you all earlier about sort of this idea of lost hope, lost dreams, that sometimes like having a narrative of like lost possibilities is more dangerous than actually being confronted by the reality when you win, which is kind of like what Zizek talks about in Pervert's Guide to Ideology when he talks about the Titanic, right? And that like, oh, Jack needed to die to preserve the fantasy of love, right? Because of course, if Jack would have lived, they would have got off the boat together, and she would have realized this guy's a fucking bum. He's a fucking loser, and this love wasn't real. I was just horny, and I wanted to rebel against my rich parents, but I'm going to go back and be a privileged little girl. And I think similarly, like if Trump would have lost, I think like the fucking election lie, the election denialism would have been turned up by tenfold. It would have been crazy because it would have been fighting for like the lost dream of what Trump could have been. And guess what? I think reality is always so much more disappointing, so much more like of a letdown than your fantasy of what's going to be. And I guess I'm just looking forward to seeing the bubble popping and Trump not being anything that these people think he's going to be. So that's kind of like my optimistic take on sort of like the possibility. And again, I could be wrong. Maybe he's going to become this like fascist leader. I mean, look, he's going to do some damage, without a doubt. There's going to be some damage done, especially when it comes to economic stuff. He's going to have more tax cuts for the rich.
Environment, probably.
So, like, there's going to be damage.
Yeah, drill, baby, drill.
But, like, is he going to, like, try to stay in power? Is he going to do all... Is it going to be this, like, is it going to be mass deportations? That's not going to be possible. Like, I know that's not going to happen. So that's my hope.
I agree with you on almost everything, except you chalk it up primarily causally to ineptitude. And I agree that he's inept. But I also think above being inept, he doesn't actually care.
Yeah.
He truly does not care about 2025. He cares about like 10 things. He's going to do those 10 things and golf. And the question is like, how much damage can the Heritage Foundation people do in that time? But I really don't think he's a fascist, cares to be a fascist, gives much of a shit about actually doing deportation.
He just wants to look good.
Like, he didn't care about building the wall.
He's a bullshitter. Yeah. He's a professional bullshitter. Like, that's the thing. And in a way, people kind of love him for that. But like I guess when it's like the really like mega people, like the reality, like so that's the silver lining. It's like, because think about how toxic it would have been. He wouldn't have been able to run again. He's too old. The toxicity from his base, if he would have lost, is conceivably, at least, a more dangerous outcome than just letting him fucking win.
Well, there's a pretty big chance that we're going to have Vance taking over because of his age. And there may this time be structural barriers that weren't there last time because of how much of the vote he won and like the Senate and all that. But from what I've seen, all eyes are just going to be on Congress again now to like stuff his worst impulses, or at least compromise them down to acceptable levels or whatever they do. But again, I don't know much about that stuff. I don't have very much stamina for following electoral politics. I hate it. I hate the culture of it. I hate it all.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, I follow it, but I also hate it. I mean, my whole research is about getting rid of it. But anyway,
I can't hate watch stuff. I just avoid it or look at it sidelong with my nose plugged.
What I was more interested in is, since Elon Musk is saying that Marxism is spreading everywhere. Also, why the fuck is Elon Musk so invested into this? This is, again, this is shit that I wish I knew about, but don't you think it's got to have something to do with like amping up trade war with China, since they're better at electric vehicles than him?
I read his net worth just like shot up billions of dollars right after the election, which
but it's
I
in
don't know
Tesla
how that
stock.
works.
It's in Tesla stock, though.
Yeah, it's a weird financial market thing.
I mean, my theory is that Elon Musk is being purely self-interested, and he sees that though the Democratic Party's proposals were incremental and ultimately not the type of broad-based vision that I would want to see for working class people, they were, going to push for a kind of a wealth tax that would have made Elon Musk pay more than 1% of his like capital gains. And I also think that there is a relatively modest, but still significant to the bottom line of people like Elon Musk, of, like more improvements to the labor relations board for union organizing. And I think Elon Musk famously has been like a huge union buster when it comes to the manufacturing plants of his cars. So like my theory is like, yeah, has he been taken over by what we could call the anti-woke mind virus? For sure. But I think at its root is like a billionaire who just doesn't want to pay more. I think it's just like, I mean, that's always the easiest explanation. Just like follow the money.
I know.
Follow where the moneyed interests are. And I just think that it's like ultimately as simple as that.
Look, yeah. I mean, we have Marxist leanings, right? So we're used to that. Like, let's follow the money, follow the material interest, and then there's going to be some rational plan behind it. But however, with Elon specifically, this is really hard to do because we basically have live, real-time access to his thought processes, and he's just demonstrably a fucking moron. Oh,
he's such a little stupid autistic kid too.
With a stream of his moronic thoughts, we can decode them. We can decode these idiotic musings. Oh, this is an ironic screen for his class interests, a future trade war, or is it union busting? But it seems more like his only thought is
just be stupidity.
Well, people think I'm funny and cool, and I'm friends with the guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you see?
You're owned.
Did you see?
Girls are owned.
Did you see the most embarrassing I think I don't know, someone, I think maybe my girlfriend sent it to me. It's like that clip of him being like USA, USA, and it's.
I'll insert it right here.
Okay, yeah, here, like it.
USA, 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 USA.
Why does he sound like that?
I think he's pronouncing A wrong.
What? U.S. No,
maybe that's my Canadianness.
No, it's the emphasis is on the wrong syllable. You're right.
Should be USA,
true. Not USA.
USA.
Yeah, it's true. It's weird. It's really weird. Anyway,
dark.
It's just
look at how ugly his.
He's just a dork. He's just a fucking dork. He's just a fucking dork.
You know, the reason I stopped watching whichever Star Trek it was the worst one. You'll know, Victor. Whichever
Discovery.
Yes, the worst one. I stopped watching
the
in
woke one.
Episode 2 when it was like, oh, we took off from Musk space station or some shit.
No, did they say that? Look, I
really?
like you. I'm a pretty big sci-fi nerd, and look, there's still a part of me. I mean, he's an absolute moron, but like, there's something. I guess the admirable thing that I find about him, which has nothing to do with his character or like intellect when it comes to any sort of social or political issues. But like, look, he's like this single-minded nerd who's like, I want cool electric cars. I want to build rockets. I want that to be viable. I'm going to fucking do it. And like, I kind of think that's like the kind of the 13-year-old sci-fi kid in me thinks that was cool. Like, and I still feel that way. It's hard for me to admit it.
No, I think
but it's like, you know,
he used to have the cultural currency of being cool for all those reasons, but now we can see like a line by line feed of his thoughts, and they're just retarded.
He's totally degraded. Well, it's the woke. It's the anti woke mind virus. Like I said, the mirror image of the woke mind virus.
Can we go to explanations just real quick? I want to get the first one off the table, because the trending explanation, it's that Latinos and black guys didn't want a woman to be president because they're chauvinists. And then Joe Rogan lost the election for Kamala just by himself. These are awful explanations.
I mean, do I think that there was some misogyny in some people? Probably. I think it was the Daily. They like went and talked to undecided voters in Georgia. And like literally they caught like this black guy on tape just being like, well, I don't know if a woman should be president. Like, so like, you know, sure, there's like that might have happened a couple times, but is it enough of an explanation? Yeah, I don't really find it that satisfying.
But isn't it funny that the anti-racist party just reverts to the most racist explanation possible the second that they get called on their bullshit? Even if Democrats like, hey, blacks, you owe us your vote. They're like, I'm going to shop around on this one. How dare you, you uneducated chauvinist. Don't know it's good for you. We gave you Obama.
I mean, it's funny because like the last 2016, like that was a huge explanation. It's like racism. What did that Van Jones guy say? It's a white lashing. It's white people lashing out. And it's like, well, now it's like a bunch of black men and Latino men, so and like Asian men, so he can't really say it's a white lashing anymore. Now it's a man lashing.
That guy was he was a Maoist at some point. That's what I heard. Mm-hmm. Completely lost his ability to analyze causation based on class interests. So that's too bad. Why don't we try it? Let's try it, guys.
Yep.
So if I was just trying to submit a very simple materialist explanation, I know I'm not the real Marxist at the table, but it's pretty easy. Mm-hmm. Neither party actually represents the interest of the largest class, the working class, and only one party even pretended to care.
Yes.
Even one party, but they both don't, obviously.
Well, but they both pretended though, and actually one slightly actually does materially implement policies that benefit that class a little bit more than the other. But anyway, continue.
But Trump voters, I listened to some of the interviews with Trump voters. They truly believe he's going to stop inflation. He's going to lower gas and grocery store prices. He's going to ensure job security by getting rid of immigrants who are there trying to take their jobs. Now, whether or not these are right or wrong, obviously they're all wrong. That's not how any of these things work. But they're all economically interested explanations for why they voted the way they did.
Precisely, yeah.
And the only reason, like we said at the beginning, I'm not an American, but the only reason I could see to vote for Kamala would be the abortion thing. Because and she's not Trump.
Yeah,
but that's her only two factors. Neither of those are economic necessarily.
And that's also and those are also the two things that is all she ever talked about too. Like pretty much all she ever talked about was like women's like reproductive rights and how bad Trump is and how he's like a fascist and all these things. And look, like I mean, there are a lot of things that in like a non-crazy world you would think would have been deal breakers for Trump.
Oh yeah.
Like the fact that like 40 out of like 48 of his top officials from his administration were like, don't ever let that guy near power again. Right? Like Republicans. Didn't matter, right? Because it's all about messaging, right? And it's kind of funny. Like I definitely saw some people be like, God, the American people are stupid. And I'm like, yeah, but like, guess whose job it is to manipulate those stupid people into voting for them? The Democrats. And they failed. And that should have been like, there's a way of messaging to appeal to stupid people, if we're going to assume that's the an explanation, right? And like, so I don't understand like why people would say that in a way that like kind of defends the Democratic Party. Not that this person I'm thinking of was necessarily trying to defend the Democratic Party, but I've seen people be like, God, the American people are so stupid. It's like, yeah, but then you need a message that appeals to stupid people.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
I think it's getting it backwards. I think stupidity is not an explanation. Stupidity.
Yeah, exactly.
Stupidity, really. Where are the smart countries?
Exactly. There you go. What I mean to say is if you offer people something, the first thing that their ears are going to prick up to is material interests. If you say, you know what, we are going to raise the minimum wage and give you free healthcare. We're going to make America into Canada. I think that party would have won with a landslide. Whoever had said that. They prevented Bernie from ever bringing that to the national stage because he probably would have won with it.
Yeah.
And that would have basically led to class war. The American healthcare system is worth $1 trillion, so they can't have that. And if you can't offer that, that's when you get to offer stupid shit instead of real shit.
Yeah.
That's when you get off into la la land with magic beans. And the magic beans, in this case, is Trump will fix the economy. Now, what the fuck is the economy? And what the fuck does it have to do with the presidency? No one, nothing, and not a single one of the 70 million people who voted for him knows what the economy is. But it's a fucking easy choice when one guy's going, hey, I'm going to make life great for you. And the other side is saying, everything's good. Look at this graph. Like Kamala, off memory, did not offer a single fucking cookie. If you think they're stupid, what do you think is going to happen? If they are stupid, say, here's a cookie.
Exactly. No, exactly. And I think that like part of it is that the Democrats responded to the like in the exact wrong way, right? Like I think just continually calling him a fascist and being like, wow, look at all these people at his rallies who are like fat, like just so much dancing around and directly reproducing Hillary's disastrous like basket of deplorables rhetoric. So like I think it's not just like it's not just talking about bread and butter issues, but it's also being a sneering fucking elitist asshole about it and looking down on the people. Like, so when you call him a fascist, when you like point those things out, which again, I'm not necessarily saying I disagree with, but if that's your main tactic, you're then like people are going to take that personally because again, they're fucking, maybe they're like sensitive conservative snowflakes, whatever you want to say. But it's a mistake to do that. And instead, I think they should have been countering Trump's message. And instead of calling him a fascist and like an authoritarian, say he's lying to you. He's lying to you about your class interests. Here's why he's lying to you. He's not actually going to be for working class people. He's going to be for the corporate class. He's going to cut billionaire taxes. Like counter his message rather than name calling him.
Yeah. That's why it always feels like they're just constricted by their donors. That's all it is. It's like they have a list. Here are the list of permissible real material things you can offer. And here's your manager. Here's your campaign manager. Here's all the acceptable rhetoric you can use. Okay, now like convince people within these very narrow constraints. You can't offer anything that's going to hurt your donors. You can't concede too much. No health care. No, none of this. No forgiving student debt. None of that stuff. Just like run on one big issue, abortion, and Trump sucks. And that's it. Everything else you just have to kind of, conjure up out of nothing.
And then she sprinkles in these like little things that like aren't bad, like certain kinds of tax credits, but they're just, the problem is like they're so wonkish and like specific that they don't offer like a broad vision. People need like a broad vision for what you are that's different. And she was so hesitant to be like, on The View, I think there's a disastrous moment when someone was like, which was a very friendly interview. And one of them was, well, if you were doing Biden's presidency over, what would you do differently? And she was like, nothing.
Yes.
Yeah. Didn't distinguish yourself at all.
Is disastrous. And like,
that's like annihilating because it's saying what you got now, that's the best you're going to do.
Exactly. It's disastrous.
The other guy who's everything he says is a lie. He's a professional liar though. And he sounds believable. So you either have nothing or you have a guy who's probably lying, but you never know. You might not be. So you're going to go with that.
I mean, I know a couple of people who are like, I would say Trump supporters. And I was talking to them about this stuff. And, I know that for them, a lot of stuff that they find that they can't stand. And these aren't people that I would even consider conservative on like social issues or any of that stuff. But there is like a real aversion, a real hatred of what they perceive as a certain kind of elite moralist discourse. That there's like a real hatred of elite moralist discourse, which maybe is connected to wokeism, maybe not.
They put it in those terms?
Yeah, actually, one of them did put it in like elite discourse, like elite or like snobby elitism.
Snobby is pretty
And that's what
detectable.
the Democrats.
Yeah, and I think that the Democratic Party is like pretty awful about the way that they're messaging. And I think that like there is
it almost comes off as, so I'm sorry to interrupt, I'm getting excited, but it almost comes off as like you're not even worth me lying to you.
Yeah.
Whereas Trump is like, I'll go to your pancake diner and lie to you to your face.
I'll tell you what you want to hear. And it's just like the attitude is so it's so elitist and insufferable, I think, that I really do think there needs to be a total excision, a total removal of a certain kind of elite academic discourse about any social issues, identity issues. I'm obviously kind of talking about wokeism. I think that stuff's just all a fucking political loser. And like, that doesn't mean like the thing, and it's not about actually getting rid of the substantive things that those things, point to, but it's about the way that they're presented. Right. So like at one point, I think Kamala was like, I'm going to have a tax credit for black men. Such a stupid idea. Like such a stupid, disastrous idea.
Wasn't it black men crypto investments or something?
Yeah. And then like such a stupid, disastrous idea. Like that stuff needs to go. Like all this like targeted stuff that's like anything that is like DEI adjacent needs to go. It's a loser. It's seen as part of an elitist discourse, as like an academic discourse that they find that like a lot of voters find snobby. A lot of voters of color hate it. And I think like, when we were talking about, some explanations about, oh, this is because of racism or whatever, like another way in which like, that's wrong. And even the grain of truth, the way in which it's true that like patriarchy or sexism or racism impacted this election is through the lens of a very elitist academic discourse. It's like an elitist academic understanding of what racism and patriarchy are. So if you try to like argue with a voter and be like, no, who's like, I'm not racist, I voted for Trump. And then you have to explain to them what systematic racism is. You're losing. That is a losing, stupid strategy. Get rid of it. Get rid of all of that stuff. It's so dumb. And it makes me mad.
I was working on an explanation for why this has become what politics is between those two parties. And I think I stumbled on something, so maybe I can present it and see what you think.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party exists to not change anything, and the Republican Party exists to change things for billionaires, to make it better for them. So the Democratic Party is just an inertial force. But to get elected, they also have to sit there and pretend that they are changing stuff. And this isn't like the history. I don't know nothing about the history, but our entire lives, at least, the Democratic Party is the party of like minority handouts. So if you want to be moral, you're going to support the party that helps gay rights. They're going to legalize gay marriage. They're going to do women's rights, defend abortion.
Stuff that doesn't cost that much money, notably.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to have black candidates. They're going to have women candidates. Meanwhile, the Republican Party, they switch power on and off, and they are going to change stuff. They're going to cut taxes and then blame all the subsequent problems on minorities. So they're more harmful than useless. But everything that the Democratic Party exists to not change, they've already changed all the stuff, right? They've done, we call it woke or DEI, but just, like allowing gay marriage, passing laws for equal pay for equal work. All that stuff is done, and now it comes to stuff that would actually cost the employing class or I don't want to say bourgeoisie, but I'm just going to say it. It's going to cost the owners money. And that's where they can't go any further. So they've run up. This is why I said this is actually like a good outcome. Yeah. It's basically the party that's supposedly for the working class. They've run out of majority appealing, big, useful things to do that do not cut into profits. And without causes they really believe in, they kind of are left now to conjure up causes. And their causes are like defending democracy, protecting the institutions, being respectable on the world stage. And they just got called on it. No one gives a shit about that stuff. Yeah. And they have nothing else to offer. And unless they figure out something to offer, which means cutting into the profits and some sort of redistribution of that cheddar. If they keep refusing to do that, they're never going to get elected again. So the way to combat bullshit is not with arguments or accusations. The cure for that bullshit is to offer benefits, real benefits, things that people can take to the bank. It's so easy.
We need a left populist takeover of the Democratic Party. Yeah. I mean, I know, and you know, I mean, hopefully our listeners are smart enough to not hear you as saying this, but don't hear Pills saying racism is over, that these issues don't, like, that's not what he's saying.
There's going to be at least a person who hears it like that.
But I just want to say that I just want to say that
you need to get
outright.
elected by 300 million people.
And substantively, like what his point is that, like, those issues, like, there's fringe ways in which we can change the society to try to make it more inclusive, like, but they are running up against the wall about that, and that's why you know, the trans issue was kind of maybe seen as the last bastion of that, but unfortunately, like, that's also kind of hit this wall where, like, they're pushing things that, like, and I hate to say it because, like, I would say maybe I'm in support of this, but it's kind of a political loser. Like, things like trans women in sports, I think that's a huge political loser. Like, I might be okay with that, but, like, I think I saw a poll that was like 86% of Americans, like, are against trans women in sports. And it's like they were running on changing Title IX of, like, the kind of, like, which is the laws, the civil rights laws, to make it so that, like, sports would be, like, forced to be trans inclusive. And I know that there were a lot of insane people who like were obsessed with this. And I agree. It's like an issue that people shouldn't obsess about. Unfortunately, it's a losing issue. It's a losing issue.
It's an issue that would benefit, like, very few people.
That's the thing.
The outrage about it would be a great way to harness loads of people, right?
Exactly.
Like, so it is kind of a lose-lose kind of platform, which is often the case. You put in, like, these issues that, like, I don't want to say they're not important. They are very important to some people, but they're more useful as just, like, political footballs.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like the whole, you know, wokeism could be a very minority thing. It could be a very marginal thing. But if you just start blowing it up and getting people all excited about it and annoyed about it, then suddenly you've got a lot of people looking at you. And
I know that the Democratic Party probably internally has I know that their advisors, a lot of their are probably these idiots from elite universities that are, like, all about DEI, and I hope all those fucking people get fired
out of touch,
because they are so out of touch. Again, it's that elite discourse, right? Like, I think there's a way of talking about these things too, about how, like, in a universalist language, about how this is going to help all minorities and all working class people. Like, I think that's what has to happen.
And I'm sure DEI really just started out as a way of laundering the moral consciousness of big corporations and universities anyway.
Exactly.
And then it was put out there as this, like, equity issue when it's not really, but if you're on the left, you have to support it. And then the right comes along and just calls the bullshit. And it's like, well, I'm not right wing, so I can't support calling the bullshit. But I also think it is kind of bullshit from a leftist perspective. So then it's like, what do I do? I'm in a rock and a hard place.
Exactly. We should really review the Matt Walsh movie, Am I Racist? I think that'd be a fun episode to do.
Yeah.
I just thought of it because he reveals how Robin DiAngelo, like, only agreed to do an interview if she could get paid $20,000.
And I don't want to go out on too much of a limb here, but I'm going to say that even among most trans people, they would much prefer free visits to the doctor, free coverage, than they would a law that says that they have to be allowed to play soccer.
I think that that's very likely true.
Practical.
Sorry if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some people who will disagree that this is a really important issue for them. And, like, you know, I was going to kind of say a bit bluntly, winning politics sometimes requires, like, sacrificing some, like, very, very minority issues if they are being used by the other side as a political football. And I think this is one of them. It's a loser.
Well, I think to Pills's theory, that's basically kind of how I think too, is that Democrats are like the status quo party. And at least the Trumpist version is like the smash the system, we want change, kind of get back at the elites kind of party. And that's what people wanted. But, you know, preserving the status quo when the status quo is shit, especially not breaking from Biden's policies towards Israel and things, like, that's pretty bad in itself. Like, who's worse, preserving the status quo or changing it in an extremely unpredictable way that probably is going to favor rich people and probably going to
Exactly.
come back and bite them, even going to come back and bite the Republicans. You know, like my example I always think of is like Obamacare, right? They targeted Obamacare, trying to get rid of it, but then realizing that actually tons of people rely on it and it would be very unpopular to get rid of. Suddenly it's just the Affordable Care Act now, and it's no longer Obamacare. We're not going after it anymore because those fucking boring realities of things people rely on are ultimately, you know, you can get them all hyped up and angry about issues, but then when they can't afford things they need, that sort of trumps the, no pun intended, the sort of fictitious rah kind of bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me that lately I've been sort of feeling like I think Obama might have been one of the worst presidents ever. Like, I think he was so bad he's like the definition of like this kind of centrist, elitist, like, you know, seems like Obama was so insidious because he looked like he had a big vision, right? He was good about talking about things in a way that seemed like
distance
and looking off into the distance and being powerful. But like, what did he do? He had a fucking supermajority in the Senate and he didn't even pass a public option. That is such an embarrassing failure, a lost opportunity. And really, like, that is because the donors were probably like, absolutely not. You cannot have a public option. So like, this is...
I think Obama was like, he's the cause of all this because he was the last person
in a way, yeah,
who could really sell. You can buy hope from me. You can take hope and change and eat them off of your dinner table. And people, we were dumb enough to believe it. 2008 was so fucking exciting.
I bought it.
I hated Bush so much. It was like, Obama, I'm not even fucking American,
so
right?
exciting.
I was emotionally invested in this narrative. But after no one's going to buy it again. You can't sell that anymore.
Man, exactly. That's the problem. He did the sales pitch and didn't deliver. Fucking man, he won so many white working class people. He won Indiana in the Electoral College. Yeah, he won Indiana in 2008. I think he lost it in 2012, but still, he won Ohio in both times. He won Florida both times. Like, man, he won Iowa. I think, both times. Like, dude, like, there was a giant working class coalition who was waiting for him to actually deliver. And he did nothing. And maybe that should be a good segue to, I think it's maybe worth talking about Bernie Sanders' statement, because I think yesterday Bernie Sanders came out with a statement basically attacking the Democratic Party and saying a lot of things that we've been saying, right? I don't know if I can read it or read a little bit of it.
Yeah, go for it.
But he said, it should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. First, it was the white working class, and now it is Latino and black workers as well. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change, and they're right. Today, while the very rich are doing phenomenally well, 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. We have more income and wealth inequality than ever before. I'm going to skip a few parts. Today, despite an explosion in technology and worker productivity, many young people will have a worse standard of living than their parents. And then he goes on to say also, I mean, I feel like he said everything right. Like, he said everything that I was thinking about. Then he says, but I know, too late. And then he says, today, despite strong opposition from a majority of Americans, we continue to spend billions funding the extremist Netanyahu government's all-out war against the Palestinian people, which has led to horrific humanitarian disaster. Again, saying everything right, too late. And then he finishes, will the big money interests and well-paid consultants who control the Democratic Party learn any real lessons from this disastrous campaign? Will they understand the pain and political alienation that tens of millions of Americans are experiencing? Do they have any ideas as to how we can take on the increasingly powerful oligarchy, which has so much economic and political power?
I know the next line.
Probably not.
Probably not.
In the coming weeks and months, those of us concerned about grassroots democracy and economic justice need to have some very serious political discussions. Stay tuned. I mean, I think he said everything right. Look, I understand why I didn't say it before.
He probably just got elected for his last term. That's why he can come out and say it now, right? He should have said that right when Kamala was just de facto ascending.
I understand why he didn't, though. I understand that, like...
Oh, yeah.
He would be blamed for the loss.
Yes, he'd be blamed for the loss.
Everyone needs to be brought to heel. Even, like, Ocasio-Cortez was going after, like, the Green Party and doing all this weird shit, running interference.
from his perspective, I understand being like, okay, the focus is on beating Trump. Like, I can't sow division in the Democratic Party because I'm going to get blamed and my message might be discredited. I think he had to wait and maybe even hope that she was going to lose, or maybe I think genuinely he probably was like, he probably thinks Trump is like a clear and present danger and wanted him to lose. But like, I hope this leads to something. I mean, that's kind of brings us to maybe a discussion about need like a populist takeover in the Democratic Party. That has to happen if they want a chance. But I would love to see a union president run to do a populist takeover of the Democratic Party. It's needed. It's long overdue.
Oh, bring those days back. Bring back the
What
60s.
What a dream. That would be full on class war. Every person worth more than $100 million would be Republican at that day. On that day,
The probably not rings so loud though.
I know it's the biggest part.
Oh yeah, okay, great. The Democratic Party now has a chance to really look at what went wrong here and at the direction they've been going and choose a new route, Maybe like slowly shifting towards the right and just following the neoliberal trend is not the right way to go. And they should actually go towards the left and capture all of that unharnessed energy that now like MAGA communists are trying to fucking fill in. And they should do that themselves and internalize these things. And try to say, okay, we're going to be the socialist party now, and we're going to be the party of the workers. No, they're not going to do any of that shit. They're going to stay on the right. They're going to try to find a new fucking candidate who's just going to represent the interests of whatever donors that probably donate to both fucking parties anyway. And are connected.
Yeah, it's gonna be some donor funded robot like fucking Pete Buttigieg or something.
Nothing's gonna change in terms of the political position of the Democratic Party. Although Bernie Sanders pointed to the ways that it should change. Yeah, go back to the workers. Yes, actually,
there is a primary process in the Democratic, and there is a primary process in the Democratic Party. I think it's possible to do a fucking takeover. It's interesting because in Canada, it's actually like much more difficult to do anything about what the political parties decide. I mean, the political parties in Canada are pretty much dictatorships. Like they can just, they just get to do whatever the fuck they want internally. But like in the US, I mean, there is a primary process. There is a chance. I mean, maybe if enough Democratic voters wake up, they could. I mean, Bernie came very close in 2016. I think he came very close. And like, he was coming off of Obama as being a huge success, right, for the Democratic Party. So he had to fight against the context of like internally the Democratic Party being like, but we just had Obama, huge success. And he still almost won. Okay. So like, I think now that like it's this disaster of them losing to Trump twice. I mean, how can you lose to Trump twice as a party and keep the status quo? Like, I mean, I agree. The probably not is ringing loud, but I'm trying to be hopeful here.
That's not going to happen. I'll be the unhopeful one. They're just going to wait it out for this 4 years. It might even take 8 years. But then there's always going to be another economic crash, another economic downturn. There'll always be another war that you can promise to pull out of. The Republicans definitely won't make anything better. So the masses will eventually just need an alternative.
I agree.
They've had their upset defeats before and come back from it. I mean, you really have to just take a huge amount of like Biden fatigue into account too, right? Like Biden had like Trump fatigue working for him, and in the natural back and forth of politics
and COVID.
Yeah, and COVID was big too. There's a lot of things, but yeah, the natural sort of back and forth of politics between the two parties. You're like have a more than 50% chance of being right if you just guess that the other party is going to win the next election, because that seems to be how it always goes anyway. Maybe 2 terms and then they'll lose. But they will sooner or later. After these 4 years, there'll be another Democrat because it's a 2-party system, and people will just be tired because that's what happens. People just get tired of it, and then they vote for the other people. They want change, and then the other people don't change things, and people get angry at them for not changing things. The other person offers change, then doesn't change a thing, and so on and so forth into all future history.
It's just going to go back and forth forever. But my heart says, this sustaining the difference between speech and what you actually do, it's becoming less tolerable. Like Obama was the last one to really get away with it in my little theory here.
Yeah.
He was the one to really sell it and people bought it. I don't think anyone is buying that again. I don't even think Trump's supporters outside of the psychotic QAnon minority of the people that voted for him, which is not all the people that voted for him. I want to say overall, I think most people that voted for Trump said, I don't know that he's going to do it, but at least he wants to. He might just be a puppet for these other interests, but at least he's trying to push back, whereas the other party's not even trying to push back. I don't think even the Republican Party that people think he's actually going to get very much done. But they also know that the Democratic Party is going to get nothing done because they said that. She could have lied with anything. Nothing's going to change.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
So stupid and disastrous. I mean, like I said, I agree with you. My brain tells me it's probably unlikely, but this is just such a stinging defeat that I guess my heart wants to say that they're going to do something different. I was thinking also about how much I, in some ways, admire the right in America, the insanity of the right, because I was listening to, I think The Daily a couple of weeks ago talking about the Stop the Steal right-wing nutcases. But you know what they do when they lose? Okay, so a lot of them genuinely believed after 2020 that the election was stolen. Obviously, nutcases consuming ridiculous things. But what did they do in response to what they saw as an intense defeat?
Organized.
They fucking got to work. They took over the local election boards.
Yeah.
And started questioning every single election. Why does the left fucking suck at that?
Yeah.
So much. And the right, who are nutcases. Yeah, who are nutcases.
I think it's because there's not a left. No one cares about Kamala. They just don't want Trump. I gave my take on Patreon the morning of the election, and I was validated for it. I didn't make any hard guesses because I didn't want to be wrong.
What did you say? Oh, you said before the results were announced, you said you thought Trump was going to win?
No, I said the only shot Kamala has is if people really care about abortion. But
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too. Exactly.
If she won, they would have pointed to that.
But did you see in all these red states when abortion was on the ballot? For example, in Arizona, which is probably going to go Trump, it looks like. I think it's not decided yet. But then it was 60%. They all want abortion, except for fucking Florida, which has a draconian minority rule where 57% of people supporting abortion rights means you lose because you need 60%.
Even they got 57. Yeah, it's crazy. It's people want Trump,
Minority
and they also
rule.
want progressive policies at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. But that tells you something. Yeah, exactly.
Give me things on paper, and then give it to me in a fun form.
That I want.
Give it to me so it looks fun.
Exactly.
This tells me that American politics is in the same state as, this is going to come out of left field, but it's grounded, I promise, as WWF wrestling was in the 90s, because it's widely heralded. You know what kayfabe is?
No,
I don't actually.
Okay, kayfabe in wrestling since the beginning, since 1900, there's this established principle. It's kind of like a magician never reveals his tricks, even if you meet him later. So in kayfabe, you and the other combatant, you hate each other. You're true enemies. You go into interviews behind the scenes. You're still acting like enemies. This is not a business relationship, and you never let that be revealed. You never show that that's what wrestling is, because if you show that, people will realize wrestling is fake.
That's the illusion.
Right.
Which they already know, but they don't want to be reminded of.
Exactly.
Exactly. Which you're right. People feel that way about Trump, probably.
Everybody knows that it's fake, but you're not allowed to say that it's fake. So kayfabe was said to have died on 3 different occasions in WWF. And by the way, I'm not at all a wrestling fan. I just found kayfabe as a description so fantastically interesting because we are reading Althusser. We are going to cover Althusser on ideology for today. And kayfabe is just a word for ideology.
Yeah, the imaginary part.
The imaginary part in American politics is you can say whatever and people don't care if you actually do it. You can promise hope and change and they'll vote for you for promising it.
Yeah.
Kamala's problem was she refused to promise anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking Biden's gone. Just say, yeah, he's old and his ideas are passé and I'm going to do better.
Exactly.
She couldn't even say that. But people are willing to meet your lie about yourself and about what you're going to do. They're willing to meet your lie where it's at, but they don't want to know that you are lying. What people want the lie to be is that you believe in yourself. You believe you can do it. And Trump believes in himself with a passion. And people are desperate enough for anything that is good enough. And Kamala, as a cynical careerist, doesn't even believe she is good enough that it's worth lying to get the job. And then she's willing probably to go to bed now, tell herself she lost because she's more moral than Trump. But this is not a moral question. Look at how moral you are. Now 300 million people are stuck with Trump because you couldn't perform kayfabe properly. So go out there. She was out there promising single-payer healthcare like 4 years ago. And this is perhaps another comfort for us because Trump believes in himself. Not even that he will do what he says, but just that he is the best fucking thing to ever happen to the country. So people are willing to give him a shot because that's what they want. Musk too, even. But fucking Vance, that guy is just like Kamala. He's a nihilist. You need these narcissists. They don't have time for nihilism. And that's the kayfabe. That's what we want to believe.
Oh man, I think that's such a good point, actually.
Good. I've posted twice about this hot new theory on Patreon. And whether you guys want to hear it or not, I'm going to subject you to more WWF deep cut lore because it's the only way to explain reality.
I think people need the aesthetics because I do think that Kamala was proposing these very specific things about tax credits that a lot of economists were like, yeah, that's a good idea. And like, but the problem is like, it wasn't nested in like a vision other than like, I'm not Trump.
Yeah. But didn't like people like, I'm pretty sure Musk was paying people to vote. He's put out that like $1 million lottery if you vote.
Oh yeah, that was
Trump
crazy.
And stuff like that. So you can just sort of almost do like a bartering system, you know, vote for me and this is what you get. But like politics hasn't been like that for as long as I can remember. The promises are much vaguer. There'll be like one or two main things. And the rest of it is just kind of like ideology, feels, whatever, vague stuff. You know, vote for me because the other person's worse, or vote for me because this is what I stand for. Nothing specific and material, just standing for values and things.
Do you think the show aspect, this nested, mythological, structured story aspect is necessary to convince a human psychologically, or is it just what it's turned into?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess we'll talk about it next time, is like, you know, you can't get rid of the ideology. You can't get rid of the spectacle. You can't get rid of that stuff. But you could make it better by actually putting like those kinds of concrete promises in there. I don't know. Maybe economics changes so fast they don't want to make these promises because, I might have to go back against them. If my promises are too specific, then it's much more obvious when I don't fulfill them. If my promises are very vague, then even if I don't want to fulfill them, I can convince people that I kind of did fulfill my promises anyway because they weren't that specific.
Do you remember when Justin Trudeau said, this is the last election under the first past the post system?
Yeah. See, that was too specific.
Yeah.
I think I might have even voted for him. I'm ashamed to admit.
I did for that. I did actually.
Oh, I did it for the cannabis.
2 months later, he's like, yeah, actually, we're not doing that.
The being lied to, yeah, the cannabis thing, or even like the buck of beer thing at the Toronto level, which materialized very, very briefly.
Lie.
And then went away just as quickly. I mean, yeah, people, you can do that kind of transactional style too, and it works. But yeah, I agree. It needs to be set in a broader approach.
Yeah, why can't it be simple material goals that benefit the most people? Why is it never that? And I think it like one explanation has to do with donors in America because their elections, like we opened up with, they're so expensive and they're so long.
Yeah,
like
money.
ours are paltry in comparison. But the fact that she lost with $1 billion is just mind blowing.
Blink of an eye.
Yeah, they're bragging about all their donors. They're like, oh, we're bragging about our corporate donors, how much money we raised. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I was just going to mention that before we started doing this, I was listening, like I said, to Sean Fain, the UAW president. I was listening to his speech kind of urging voters. And he was very good about talking about how, like, even though he's urging his members to vote for Kamala Harris, that the Democratic Party is like corporately is like very influenced by corporate. But he also said the same thing that we were just talking about, which is like, he's like, big business people. He's like, Trump supporters, they want us to argue about who you marry. They want us to argue about like gender identity. And it's like, because they can keep making their billions of dollars when we're busy being distracted by that stuff. And I think that's exactly the right message that like a labor oriented person needs to be talking about.
You know, if the Democrats would just adopt a more class-based politics, you know, that would be a winning strategy for most people, but probably a losing strategy for big money or getting those donors, because they'd be terrified of that.
You know, the other thought that I have too is like, I think that it would have been much more difficult for the Democratic Party to do a total populist working class takeover in like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. But I think it's not that hard. Like, I think it's like way more possible now with alternative media, because like back then, like you really needed, like there's like a nice, like tight connection between like corporate media and like corporate donors. And it's like now, like, I think the Trump phenomena shows that like you can just let go of all that shit. Like you can just like forget about the corporate modem. I'm not saying that I'm like, I'm cautiously maybe like, I just think
one can dream.
I don't know, like, how could they be so stupid? How could they be so stupid to not do anything different? Like,
No, they are.
How could it be possible? My heart is telling me that too.
You'll see. It's going to be Buttigieg 2028.
I know. They're going to fucking
Whenever I
Buttigieg.
see stupidity in the back of my mind, I just think there must be some kind of constraint there, because nobody's that stupid.
They just need to turn their back on the corporate donors and go all full in on like alternative social media.
Just go right around it. Reach people directly.
Just reject them. Just get like that Shark Tank guy who is what's his name? Fucking Mark Cuban. Just tell him to hit the road. You're not welcome here anymore. Like, even like honestly, just fucking tell them, like, get the fuck out of this party. We're becoming a populist left party.
Yeah, this was called the podcast election at one point too. The new media is getting in there, and people are getting used to it too. Facebook isn't this crazy mind fuck that it used to be.
There was a great exchange where they were talking about they were talking about podcasters and stuff, and I think it was like Mehdi Hassan and I think Ryan Grimm and I think, you know, he was saying like they were talking about like Joe Rogan and the importance that he ended up endorsing, and then Mehdi Hassan's like, we need our it's like we don't need like to pander to Joe Rogan, we need our own Joe Rogan. And then I think Ryan Grimm was like, yeah, we had him. He nominated Bernie Sanders in 2016. He was ours. Like, what do you mean we need our own?
True, they had him. It was the Bernie Bros.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm still
keep
Bernie
trying.
bro.
Maybe it'll work next time.
I mean, he's too old now. I mean, what is he, like 85?
We
Oh,
need
83.
a newer,
Okay.
younger one.
What about the squad? I mean, I've only heard like bad things about AOC for like 2 years and never heard her say anything. But I saw some of her explaining her rationale on Instagram, and she seems pretty with it. You know, she's got like a rationale for timing and when to support the party and when to butt heads with the party. But I don't know. I've been inundated, probably like a lot of people, with internet rhetoric that she's a sellout, bullshit artist, careerist. Are either of those things even close to true? Is there like a...
Yeah, I think I do like it when she talks about like ideas. There could be potential there. Yeah. I think she can come off as a little bit annoying, so that concerns me sometimes, but like that might just be that
That's your Latino chauvinism though.
That's my Latino chauvinism, being chauvinistic against a fellow Latina.
Crabs in a bucket.
Yeah, I mean, like, look. When I've heard her like extensively talk about issues, I find myself like nodding along 95% with what she says.
All right. Well, why don't we cut it there? Do you guys have any final thoughts? A lot of what I'm hearing, like I think I also listened to the New York Times episode. They're just so depressed, like, oh, what do we do now? And I'm kind of more like optimistic because there's only one thing left to do now.
Yeah,
so
that's
you can either do it or you can keep losing forever.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think I feel very similarly. Like the night it happened, I was depressed a little bit, even though I wasn't surprised. And like I said, I had empathy for like women being very disturbed by the results. But then ultimately I feel the same way. I'm kind of like, yeah, like they know what they need to do. And if they're not going to do it, they're going to keep losing. Yeah.
Yeah. The cynical side of me is excited about what's going to happen, even though it's probably going to suck. I feel like I wanted the Democrats to lose more than I wanted the Republicans to lose. Maybe it's terrible.
You got women at risk. You also have the Great Mother, the Gaia.
Yeah,
the Earth Mother.
Drill,
she's
baby,
at
drill
risk.
is not going to be good.
It's like let's fuck Mother Earth. It's like all like how much damage. If there's a way out of it, it's how can the damage be staved off. Did they win the House?
I think they probably will, but I don't know if it's been called yet. House. It's not called yet. There's still like a lot of districts. So, but like, yeah, they're leading, and I think they've flipped 6 seats, meaning like seats that were Democrat before, and the Democrats have flipped 3 that used to be Republicans. So I think there's still a chance that the Democrats could hang on to the House, but it's kind of looking. I think last I checked, people think that maybe the Republicans are gonna have like a 4 or 5 seat majority, so it'll be close.
Yeah, it's not going to be good. It won't be boring.
And the other silver lining is all the depressed incel Trump supporters can just shut the fuck up now because your boy's in office.
Yeah, exactly. Now we get to let's see him do the things that you think he was going to do, and let's see you get disappointed again. That's my cope.
I don't want to hear any more fucking complaining about wokeness. He's there now. You can all shut the fuck up.
Your life's not going to get any better, dude. Come on.
At least it's not going to get better under their chosen leader.
I hope, I can't believe that he would, but I hope Trump keeps going on to podcasts. There's always a chance some bro just asks him, hey, you know that thing you said you were going to do last time you were here? Did you ever get around to doing it? And I
also can't wait for Elon Musk to become the Secretary of Government Efficiency.
Yeah, cutting. He said there's like at least 2 or 3 trillion that can be cut out of government spending.
All these people are going to be so ineffective. It's going to be hilarious. Again, I'm telling you, that's that's my cope. Let's just see how bad they do.
They're going to fire a lot of people that probably...
I know, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Imagine if he turned the EPA into what he did to Twitter, which is reduce its value by 75% in like.
I realize that it's a very detached perspective, and the people who are like in the firing line of shit Trump is going to do, it's going to be terrible for them. Probably at the borders, probably immigration and deportation issues are going to be shit for people. Yeah. And so the hopefulness is very cynical and with full realization that yeah, I have a very outsider privileged distance perspective on this.
I'm going to say he's not going to do anything.
Yeah, I told you. I don't think he's going to.
That takes too much work. He's going to go play golf.
Yeah, he's going to let someone handle it, and that person's probably going to be shit.
Like, I'm definitely afraid of someone like Stephen Miller taking over.
Oh, yeah.
Secretary
That's what
of
everyone's
State,
saying. Whoever he chooses
but,
for his government, that's where the horrible stuff is going to start coming in. Because it's just going to be like fucking a Barad-dûr of Nazguls running America.
Who shall inherit Middle Earth? Who can interpret Lord of the Rings properly?
I'm excited to... I'm going to be going to a conference in Virginia in, I think, 2 weeks. And I'm doing a road trip with a couple buddies who are also presenting. And we're going to be driving through what was the second most Trumpist state this time around in West Virginia, which voted for Trump. 70.9% voted for Trump in West Virginia. And I'm going with it's me. It's like almost a setup of a joke. It's a Canadian, an Australian, and an Israeli are in a car driving through West Virginia.
Yeah.
To the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they all stop at a diner.
Younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze.
Exactly.
For gas and some grits.
Good note to end it on.
We're just trying to make sense of it. like I said, got a lot of empathy for people, for women, and
The entire country of America is basically like a TV screen for us. So
it is. We can't help but comment.
it's hard to
really,
feel the pain.
It's kind of like watching the like finale of Game of Thrones for us.
Yeah, like oh, this sucks. This is fucking bullshit.
Exactly.
Not being a professional political commentator, I'm hoping this is just more therapeutic than anything else.
Yeah.
Get new writers. This fucking blows.
Exactly.
All right, that's it. Thanks so much. Check us out on Patreon next week for some Althusser. We're gonna read Althusser for at least 2 weeks, and Victor has agreed that he's gonna enjoy it.
He's promised.
Yeah.
He's promised. All right, yeah, we're covering ideology. No spoilers. See you guys.
All right.
Thanks
That was
for
a long one.
Thanks for the chat.
Yep.
Bye.